This week, we're recreating Billie's crispy potatoes with beef tartare and barbecue meatloaf sauce. Billie was a past contestant of season, I'm not actually sure which season, but she was a past winner. I've eaten plenty of beef tartare before in my life, and crispy potatoes, but never in the same dish. I think this is going to be a good one. To start off, we're going to need to get a pot of water on the boil, and in the water, we're going to add the Worcestershire sauce and some salt. So we'll get that onto the stove, bring it up to a boil while we get the potatoes peeled. To start off, we're just going to peel the potatoes and then grate them on the largest side on the box grater, and then we're going to put them straight into some cold water just to stop them turning brown. You could grate them directly into the bowl, but I find it easy just to grate them all onto the board, and then as soon as I finish grating all of the potato, then I'll transfer them into my hot cold water. As you can see, got my water and Worcestershire and all that good stuff up to a boil, and also got my potatoes here. Now, you could drain these in a colander or something like that, but I'm just going to scoop them out with my slotted spoon, put them straight into the water. So I'm going to transfer these in here. So, once you've got them all transferred in, you're just going to let them simmer away for about 5 minutes until they're just cooked tender. Just while the potatoes are back there cooking, in this pot I got some duck fat, some butter and some fresh sprigs of thyme. I'm just going to melt all that on a medium heat, and then once it's all melted, I'll remove it from the heat and then let the thyme infuse for a few minutes, and then take out the thyme, and then that'll be ready. Alright, as you can see, the duck fat and the butter's all melted. Now I'm just going to set this aside for a few minutes, and then once the thyme's done its job and nicely infused, we'll take out the thyme. Alrighty, so my potatoes are finished cooking, and I've got my board here lined with a whole bunch of paper towels. You can also do this on a tea towel or something, but I'm just going to do that. Use the paper towel. Then you want to drain all your potatoes. So I'm just using the slotted spoon again. We'll scoop them all out the pot, and we'll spread them out evenly over the paper towel. As you see, I've got my potatoes all dried off, and I've placed them into a bowl. And into there, I'm going to add some flour and my duck fat, butter infused with thyme. Also, I'm going to crack some pepper in there, add some salt. Alright, now we'll get this all mixed up. You could use a spoon, or, you know, the best thing I would use is just use your hand. Get it all nicely incorporated. Alright, as you see, I've got my baking tray here, already lined with some baking paper. Now, in the recipe, it's specifically stated that you have like a 2 centimeter overlap on the long sides. Now, I'm pretty sure that's so you have some little handles once it's cooked to lift it out. But anyway, just go ahead, kick the mixture, and make sure you really push it into the sides, and make sure you really push it in there so there's no gaps. Alright, as you can see, got my potatoes all nicely pressed into the container here. Now I'm going to stick that into a preheated 180 degree oven with the fan on. We're going to put it in there for 45 minutes. Okay, to make the mayonnaise is very, very simple. If you have a stick blender, you just bang every ingredient into a canister like this. You place the stick blender in, and then when I turn it on, you slowly pull up and it'll emulsify. It's very quick. Here we go. As I was making the mayonnaise, it wasn't as thick as I wanted it to be, so I just added oil a little bit at a time until I reached the thickness that I wanted. So now that's good, and I've tasted it for seasoning, and that is just about perfect. So I'm going to transfer it to a squeeze bottle and set it aside in the fridge. As you can see, just taking my potatoes out of the oven, and they look and smell absolutely amazing. Alright, we're just going to let them sit here on the counter, just like this, for about 5 or 10 minutes, so they cool down slightly, and then we'll come back and weight it down and get it in the fridge. Alright, my potatoes been sitting on the bench here for a few minutes. Well, been a little bit longer than a few minutes, but, it's cool enough to touch. So I'm just going to fold these edges in a little bit, and then, ideally, if I had another baking dish the same as this, I could sit that on top and then weight it down. But I don't. But what I do have is just some jars, and I've just filled them up with water. So I'm going to stick that in there, weight it down, and now I'm going to stick this in the fridge for about an hour until it completely cools off. So the sauce that's going to be mixed through the tartare is actually her grandmother's meatloaf sauce that she uses. Anyway, into a saucepan, going to put in a tablespoon of mustard, Then we're going to go in with some Worcestershire sauce. Going to go in with some sugar. We got some barbecue sauce. And we got ketchup. We got some lemon juice. Got some red wine vinegar. We'll go in with a few cranks of freshly cracked pepper. And finally, some salt. Now we'll head to the stove and we'll get this on. And get it all melty and nicely incorporated. Alright, just got the saucepan on the stove. Got it on a medium heat. And we're just going to let that all get all nicely incorporated. And once the sugar's dissolved, we'll take it off the heat and set it aside to cool. Okay, as you can see, everything's nicely incorporated and the sugar's all dissolved. So I'm just going to set this aside and let it cool down completely in the fridge. Okay, for the fried capers, I've just got some neutral oil here, heated up in a pan. It's at about 180 degrees. Now I've got my capers and I've just dried them between some paper towel, and that'll stop it from, you know, splattering and popping everywhere. The recipe calls for just a tablespoon of fried capers, but these things are amazing to snack on. So I'm doing more, so I can, you know, snack on some. Anyway, so I'll just go ahead and plop them in the fryer. And this should only take about 1 minute to fry. And then we'll take them out and transfer them to a paper towel lined tray. Alrighty, I've got my piece of beef here. Now I'm just going to cut it up into little 6 by 6 millimeter cubes and taking off any sinew, silver skin and any fat that I see. So I'll go ahead and get that all knocked out and then we'll come back. As you can see, I've got all my beef cut up into little cubes. Don't get too bogged down with 6 by 6 millimeters. Just make them super small, like this. Try and remove as much fat and sinew as you can. Alright, now I've got my sauce on the side here. Now, after it cooled down, I've already checked it for seasoning and everything like that. With mine, I added just a little bit more lemon juice and a little bit more salt. So now we're just going to add this to the meat. We'll get it all nicely coated. As you can see, I've got plenty of sauce in there and I've mixed it all through so it's nicely covered. Now we'll just cover this and we'll stick that in the fridge until we're ready with the rest. I've had my potatoes sitting in the fridge there, nicely cooled and weighted down. Now we're just going to lift it out. As you see, there's quite a lot of fat pulled on top, so we'll lift that out. And then we'll just, I think we'll have to drain a little bit of this fat back into the dish, so just nice and carefully. Alright, now we're just going to carefully, without breaking it like I just nearly did, carefully slide it off of the baking paper. Alright, we've got it out of the baking paper. Now we're just going to trim it up into 6 equal portions. So I'm going to get my tape measure out, make sure I get them all into equal portions, and then we'll come back. I've got them all portioned up, and I've just transferred them onto this plate. Now we'll set these aside until we're ready to fry them. I've got my duck fat and oil heated up in a pan. The oil that I used is the same oil that I used to fry the capers in. I just took some out and yeah. I've got my oil up to temp and now I'm just going to fry the potatoes off until they're nice and golden and crispy on all sides. Okay, once you've gone around and you've got all the edges nice and crispy, you're just going to transfer them to a paper towel lined plate to drain. And as soon as you remove them, you're going to hit them with a little bit of salt, just to give them some seasoning. Okay, I forgot a step before. Now before I added the beef to the sauce, or the sauce to the beef, whichever way you want to look at it, I should have added some capers and thyme. So I'm just going to add that in now. We'll just mix that in, and now we're ready to plate up. This dish to me just screams finger food, so I'm not going to use any cutlery. Using the duck fat to fry the potatoes and putting it through the potatoes when you bake it, that is a genius move. And that Worcestershire Mayo and the Worcestershire sauce all the way through it, that was an absolute genius move. Individually, they're kind of polarizing and very flavorful, but together, they just make it absolutely amazing. I'm definitely making this again.